When I was about 9 years old, my mother took me to Allison Hill in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which is not a very nice place in the city, where there's a lot of poverty, a lot of poverty. And so I worked in a soup kitchen there, and I got to firsthand experience the people who are living in poverty at 9 years old, which was really a lot for me. And I come from a pretty affluent family, but my mom wanted to make sure that I was understanding people who don't live a life like me. And so from there, I really started to become a voice for people who lived in poverty, no matter why they live in poverty. Just the fact that they are going to bed hungry each night. And so this really started to pick up when I visited Detroit and when I did work in York this past fall, when I saw that poverty is all throughout America and nobody's really talking about it and nobody's really trying to fix it. We just know that it's there. And so I've started to really talk about it in an open environment, that we need to be raising awareness to the problem that is happening in this country.
I think Christians should be involved in advocacy, basically because it all boils down to God's love and our idea that all of humanity should really just be allies for each other, and not only for their group of people, but also for everyone else. I kind of think about 3 different stories that are always kind of in my brain, which is the woman at the well, the prodigal son, and the leper, and how Jesus went up to people who society think are broken and kind of put them back together. And I'm not saying that's my job is to go put them back together, but to maybe get people excited that even though we see people as broken, that they have potential and that it's our job to kind of love them and be kind to them. We like to say that we're really open and our doors are always open, but when someone who's different or something, an idea that's different that comes in, our actions are different than our words. And so I think there needs to be a communication or a connection between our actions and words.
This past fall, I was working in York City at a men's mission home. A lot of the men there struggle with drug addiction, things along that matter. However, there was this man there named Mark who was really, really cranky, unlike all the other guys. The other guys were talking to me, how are you, things like that, and Mark was just completely out of the picture. So while I was cleaning up, I was talking to Mark, just trying to get him out of his shell, along with another woman, and Mark opened up to us explaining that I never thought I'd be here. So we all of a sudden knew that Mark never asked for this life. He didn't do anything to make himself there. So Mark opened up and told us that just a few months ago, he was CEO of a huge company that him and his brother started, and his brother passed away unexpectedly, and the company was taken over by another person who did not know how to run a business. And so Mark watched this whole business that him and his brother created just fall apart. So Mark lost his job, he lost everything. He explained that his wife and him were living beyond their means, but because they were able to, because they worked hard and they built this company and they invested. And so things were just falling apart for Mark. So he was put on unemployment benefits and he was trying to look for jobs. Very well-educated man. He was hoping to attend seminary to maybe do things in that field if the business didn't really work out. So he had to stop school, obviously, and started to just look for jobs. Mark was unable to find a job despite his experiences and abilities to have a pretty good job. His wife left him. He lost his home and his children. So Mark currently lives at the Mission in York. And hearing Mark's story definitely reminded me and affirmed that people don't ask to be in poverty, that life happens, and people who never thought that they'd ever be living in a mission without their family, much like Mark, are everyday stories. And so these stereotypes that we have about people who live in poverty and that people ask for it or they don't work hard enough, they're not true at all. That people who build businesses and have multiple college degrees are living in poverty. And so it's something that we should be talking about because poverty affects everyone.
When I was 12 years old, I went to my first junior high youth gathering, And our theme verse was 1 Timothy, and how people shouldn't look down on you because you're young and you still have a voice that's very valued and very relevant. And so that has been my Bible verse that has always stuck with me. I go to a Quaker school where we happen to be very, very open. And so one day I was walking down the halls and I saw a bathroom and the sign said gender neutral bathroom. And at that moment, I was like, what in the world is gender neutral? Are there people in my school who don't identify as female or male? And so I went to my synod and I said, I want to know if our church does anything with the LGBTQ community, and that I identify as a straight cisgender female. And so where my place was in that was kind of very hard and very challenging. And so I ran a day camp for transgender children at the Philadelphia Trans Health Conference, and that has been absolutely life-changing and completely my passion. So I'm an advocate for transgender human beings and where they stand in society, and I think that they need people who don't identify as them to be in their corner and to be on their side, because honestly they're really afraid of anyone who's different from them, just as we are afraid of them. And so we just all need to figure it out, be okay to make mistakes, and come and be super cool.
So if someone came to me asking about how they would get started in advocacy, I would tell them to pray about it, of course, and think about what is heavy on their heart and what are they passionate about. What are things that they think about all the time? And then that's what I think you should advocate about, because you advocate best when you're passionate and when the Spirit just fuels you to do what you're passionate about. And so then I would say start small. Just start talking to people about it. Hey, like, did you hear that the minimum wage isn't living wage anymore because of inflation? So it's start talking small, and then start doing things in your community so you have people's stories to tell, and then go from there. Like, there are lots of resources in the Lutheran Church, who's a big advocate church, to build whatever your advocate's about. There are so many things, even World Hunger in America. There are so many things that can fit your passion, and so just run with it. Don't let anybody tell you no. Just pray and talk about it.
At first, I started advocating for something new in my life and something that I have not always been passionate about, but saw a little glimpse of it in a certain situation and wanted to know more. And so that's what I think really drives me, is I'm always wanting to know more about the group I'm advocating with and just how that group is treated. So first things first, I would say, learn a little bit. I think even for me, I still don't know everything about the transgender community, and I'm always willing to learn something new. But just trying to get like those basics down. So what is a transgender person would be awesome. So just kind of figuring out that knowledge, but also being able to have that hard conversation is what I call it, because people don't want to talk about transgender people. But being passionate about either having hard conversations about transgender people or anything in general that's really hard to talk about, just having that passion to be able to sit down with a person and be okay if your views aren't the same, but you're listening to understand what they're saying, which I think is also really important. Yeah.